Friends, so this is a new installment, next installment of a series that we're doing called Better Than Benchmarks. And in a way, that's really the promise of Lazy Summer is to help users, help DeFi native users and other types of users beat the benchmarks that we as users have come to expect in DeFi on both ETH and in stablecoins. So let's first take a look at what we are up against, so to speak. So in USD terms, the benchmark rate is just 365 basis points if we want to sound smart, but or 3.65% on USD stablecoins. We can say USDC if we want. And on ETH, it's just over 2%, so 2.27% base yield or benchmark yield, let's say, for 30 days, which is probably the most appropriate time frame to look at because, we're in this for the long term. So this tells a pretty good story in terms of what we should come to expect in DeFi and whether this sort of notion of risk reward, this notion of trade-offs makes sense, right? If you can get 3.65% as, I don't want to say the risk-free rate, but as a base rate in DeFi, why does it make sense to go elsewhere? So before we get into Lazy Summer specifically, let's first take a look at the yields in the ecosystem ranked more so by APY itself. So if we take a look at, looks like my setting has disappeared here. So we want to go on mainnet. We want to go on base. We want to go on Arbitrum. And we want to go on Hyperliquid. Why? I will tell you in a second. And we want to look at ETH. Great. And we want a minimum TVL of $1 million. Great. So now if we rank by APY over the last 30 days, we start to see a pretty interesting picture. And if we go through these different yields, we'll see, first let's get back to our base. 2.37 or 2.27 is our sort of base yield. So basically anything under this, which we'll talk about Lazy Summer here in a second, is we have to ask ourselves, is the juice worth the squeeze, basically. Now, if we talk about these yield sources up here, it is almost basically somewhat right to say that Lazy Summer, obviously this sounds quite self-serving, but should really be number 2 or number 3. And the reason why that is because of a notion of, one, opacity, number one, and number 2 is liquidity. So tokamak base ETH, 9 summits, I'm actually not too sure about, so this is a very interesting thing. Perhaps this is worth considering to be put into the Lazy Summer protocol. So that's a good note to take. Let's go back here for a second. Refresh. Great. So that's perhaps a really good note to take, is maybe that 9 summits flagship is something that should be put into Lazy Summer. Now, when we talk about EtherFi Liquid, YoETH, and strategies like this, there's one critical thing that is not mentioned here, which is, as I said, opacity and liquidity. So what is actually being done behind the hood with EtherFi Liquid? It's actually not 100% clear. And can you get liquidity right away from both EtherFi Liquid and YoETH? So, meaning if you deposit 100 ETH today, will you be able to take that 100 ETH out tomorrow? And the answer for both of these strategies is no, which is a huge consideration that users need to make. So if we look at Yo, and we want to launch the app, obviously, and we want to look at YoETH, that was one that we were just talking about, and we look at instant redemptions. So that is great. Okay. So 14 ETH. So as we said, 14 ETH can be taken out on mainnet. So if you deposit 100 ETH, you can only get 14 ETH out, which is, something that users need to be really, really aware of, which I don't think is very well. Which is not the job of also.fyi to communicate that here, but it should, users should be really considered about that. Now, KPK WETH is something that is going to be put into Lazy Summer protocol this week, very soon. Same with ExtraFi XLend is also being put into Lazy Summer. So these are just some of the reasons why it is very somewhat rational, I guess you could say, or makes a lot of sense to just use Lazy Summer, and to sort of the tagline, the promise is always kind of to do less, which makes a lot of sense. Now, I would love for everybody to really remember these different yield sources, and we can go back to them in a second, because this is really the power of Lazy Summer. And I can just take a look right now. We can show you right now, which is if we go to ETH, and we look at, let's say, ETH lower risk, these yields are instantaneous. That's why they just look a little bit lower right now. But yeah, if we look at the vault exposure breakdown, one thing that's really amazing is that there is access to all of these underlying strategies, and it's just a matter of raising the risk caps to give users exposure to these underlying strategies, which is a really great thing. Yeah, so I would say that's one of the, just a really amazing benefit and feature of Lazy Summer. Although it does look like here there are a couple of yield sources that can be added, which is also the beauty of Lazy Summer, that it can just, anything that's relevant can just simply be added to the underlying yield sources. Instant liquidity of 2.2k ETH. So if you're on mainnet, or actually on this case in base, but let's look at mainnet. Even there should be even more. So 6.7k of instant liquidity that users can get immediately. So no need to be. And KPK WETH is already added. Just a matter of raising the caps, which will be done this week. So, yeah, this is really the power of Lazy Summer, especially, for having all of these underlying yield sources ready. Now, let's take a really brief look at USD, which is 3.6, and in terms of what yields are there, we need to take a look at USDC and a minimum TVL of 1 million and 30-day APY. Great. So here where things get much more varied, I think, especially when it comes to stablecoins, is that these underlying strategies are not created equal. So minus Apollo will be coming into the Lazy Summer protocol this week. So that will be added. That will be a great addition to the higher risk strategy. But now on the same hand, Midas M Edge was rejected from entering the Lazy Summer protocol. So just another reason of, these lists are really great in terms of assessing what is available, but there are many trade-offs that are not articulated on within these dashboards and such. For example, if we look at M Apollo, uh, if we look at M Apollo or Midas even, um, it's quite clear that these are not created equal, and we see Block Analytica making a beautiful and in-depth assessment here of Midas MMEV, um, which ultimately was rejected for a few different reasons, which is that there was sort of a lack of clarity around how funds were being used in a specific way, and concerns about illiquidity basically as well. So back to this notion of not being able to withdraw, which is really one of the key risks when assessing any yield strategy. Now, conversely, M Apollo, by the same protocol, Midas, not that these are the strategies are from Midas, but they're using the same underlying protocol to launch these strategies, was great. So similar to just like not all Morpho vaults are created equal, not all Midas vaults are created equal, and that's not immediately clear upon lists like this. So these are great to find things, but ultimately, it comes back to being able to have something that is doing the diligence on your behalf and giving you access to these underlying strategies, which, to be fair, a lot of these strategies are actually either set to zero within the Lazy Summer protocol or not in the Lazy Summer protocol at all. So we really want to do a good job of requesting these different yield sources to be within the Lazy Summer protocol. And yeah, that's super important. We had to skip to a few pages in order to see the Lazy Summer protocol, which means that a lot of these strategies need to be requested as a RFC or also just a vote to in the Lazy Summer protocol to add them. So that's not a problem. It's good to be honest with ourselves and to realize that maybe the Lazy Summer USD strategies at the moment are not really beating the benchmarks, but not in a material way or giving users as much access to all of these strategies that they could be, and as such, these can be added probably by myself to the RFC framework and ultimately the Lazy Summer governance and voting system. So yeah, when we compare that to the actual Lazy Summer vaults, for example, a lot of these strategies, as I mentioned, have access to many of the yields that we saw in that list. If we look at Morpho USDC MEV, if we look at Morpho Steakhouse Infini, just a lot of great strategies that are here that users can have access to. It's just a matter of raising caps, which should happen this week from Block Analytica. Now, I want to actually also, before I do that, in case anybody hasn't seen, the summer TGE is scheduled and ready for the 21st of January. So now not only can you think about these underlying yields and native yields, but you can also think about earning real summer token rewards as well, liquid token rewards that have a mark-to-market price, and that's great. And that'll be on the 21st of January, and it's confirmed. So, just under 2 weeks from now, which is really great and something to look forward to. Now, lastly, I would want to break some news here, which is two things. You may have noticed that I selected a new network that many people may not be familiar with, but this is a new a new uh, network that is going to be added to the Lazy Summer protocol this week. So we're happy to announce that that Hyperliquid is going to be part of the Lazy Summer protocol, and we're super excited about this new network, and probably maybe even the one of the emerging DeFi ecosystems that could be probably bigger than Base, maybe bigger than Base, maybe even one day bigger than Mainnet. So great to see, and you heard it here first that Lazy Summer will be part of the Hyperliquid ecosystem very, 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 very soon. Now, the last thing I wanted to touch on was, when we go back to this notion of benchmarks, it doesn't really consider this notion of risk-adjusted yield. So, Lazy Summer is really about risk-adjusted yield. Block Analytica is actively monitoring the market and giving risk assessments, and for example, in times like the stream incident around November 6th, they could make immediate decisions to set risk caps to zero, which is very impactful for for Lazy Summer users, and not being able to have exposure to any type of risky collateral, but specifically any type of risky yield sources. Now, when we get to different types of users, or users who have more of a risk appetite, or who really just care about this notion of beating the benchmark, which is obviously the name of this little series here, is that that is really about just having access to what's available, and in a considered and somewhat not risk managed, but in a way that considers risk, but doesn't focus only on risk. And this is what the DAO managed vaults or index vaults are trying to be, or what we'll launch to be, which is what takes the heuristics and takes the rules of thumb of Block Analytica and puts it into a static framework that can just be applied across all different types of yield sources. So that will also be coming very, 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 very soon, probably before the TGE. So users will really just get a proxy access to all of these yields here, basically, that you can see. And it'll be in a risk managed way in terms of risk framework. It'll have a risk framework that it adheres to, and just rebalance with, in correspondence with one, that framework, and then two, the yield itself. So it's users who want to take that risk and want to simply have just as much access as possible in a risk, in a coherent risk way, then you'll get all of the benefits of Lazy Summer, in terms of rebalancing, diversification, hands off, the ability to do less, but within the context of a little bit more of a risk-seeking strategy that should generate higher yields in a non-risk adjusted way. Whereas Lazy Summer Core is more about risk-adjusted yield, active risk management, giving users a real deep peace of mind with respect to the risk management that's going into the strategies and taking place. So that's it for this week, and thank you for taking the time to listen to me, and a lot of exciting stuff ahead.